Hi everybody, very welcome to yet another live stream here on the Mentour Pilot channel. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic, and I know you are because you're here and you have all of your questions about aviation ready, so let's get started. Now, if you guys haven't been on one of my live streams before, this is how it works, all right? I will be taking the questions that I see that I feel are relevant from the normal chat, but if you have something that you really want to ask me and you want to be guaranteed that you get an answer, well then you just use the little sign, the little dollar sign below that will send a super chat question, and the super chat questions that will actually cost you a bit of money, which would go to supporting me, the channel, the work that I do, and I guarantee that I will be answering all of the super chat questions. Okay, so if there's a lot of them, I will be concentrating on the super chat questions. If not, I'll be taking questions from the normal chat as well. And I want to take this opportunity before I start talking about aviation to say a huge thank you to my Patreon crew. I know that there's a lot of you out there who are part of my Patreon crew, and you're really important to me and the channel. I know I keep saying that, but every time that I do a new video, and I hope you've noticed that I do quite a lot of new videos now, I send it off to be reviewed by my Patreon crew. They check it out, they give me feedback if there's something maybe I shouldn't say, maybe I shouldn't do. And actually quite recently I have changed videos based on the feedback from the Patreon crew. And also, of course, if one of my patrons needs a little bit of a hangout, let's say that they have some questions about the the training or something like that, then we make sure that we can set up a Skype call, just you and them to see, well, sorry, just me and them to see what we can do, right? It's not something, I don't spend my whole days doing Skype calls with my patrons, but I do try to find my time if with them, you know, as often as it's possible and as often as it's needed, I should say. So if you feel like you want to become part of the Patreon crew and you want to become a part of the team, then here in the description of this video and the description of all the videos that I do, there is a link that you can click on, you can choose it. And by the way, if you become a patron at a $10 or higher level, well then just send me a message in Patreon and I will make you a premium member inside of the Mentour Aviation app as well. All right, that's an extra perk for anyone at the $10 or above level. So think about that. And we have our first super chat question. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Bea Layton, I don't have a question. I just wanted to support you. Ah, that's nice. That's great. Yeah, I cannot overemphasize how important this. Like, I had a question today when I had a live stream in the app, which I do as often as I possibly can. There was a question about what was going on with my base and my job, because as I said on an earlier live stream, I was actually given a notice of termination of employment in September because my base was disappearing. I have very good news. The good news is that the base stays open, so I will be continuing to work out of my base in Girona. The not so good news is that the base has been turned into what's called a seasonal base, which means that during the winter there's very little action going on, and we who are based here are forced to go on to unpaid leave for a few months. So in March and April I will not be working, I will not be flying, and I will not be getting paid. So all of you who are my patrons and all of you who are helping out the channel here in the super chat and otherwise, thank you, because you guys are enabling me to concentrate on the channel during these months and not having to look for other work somewhere else. So I wanted to say that. I want to say a huge thank you to all of you guys who are contributing and who are supporting what I'm doing, yeah, and that's it. So, Bob Blitheract, you are awesome, Peter. Well, thank you very much. That always, you can never hear that too often. Arnaud, for some reason, has retracted his message. How does the auto relight system work? From Bryce Burt. Yeah, so in the 737, our igniters, which we have 2 of them in each engine, they can be put into different settings depending on where, you know, what phase of flight we are. Normally in the start mode, that's when we put it to ground, well then they're both igniting, and it's part of a startup cycle. It's only really used then. So we put them to ground, that will start the motoring of the engine, and then obviously the igniters will start as well. Normally when we're flying in normal conditions, they're in off. That's because we don't need the igniters to be working because the engine is turning, the engine is burning. and the flames are self-sustaining. Okay, when we fly into an area of turbulence or very hard precipitation, a lot of rain, sleet, ice, stuff like that, we put them to continuous. And continuous, it means that one igniter on each engine is continuously lighting. So you have a little arc, a little spark arc in the engine that's continuously energized in case the turbulence, for example, would cause a momentarily flame out, then it's immediately relit. And you can also put it over to flight if you feel that it is really bad, in which case both igniters will be igniting continuously. And the way that works is that if the engine feels that it's shutting down, even if the start switches are in off, the engine feels that there's a flame out condition, it will actually reignite automatically anyway. So most cases when people actually have had engine failures, the engines would have restarted before the pilots have even recognized that the engine failure has occurred, because it's just a momentarily kind of spool down, the igniter comes in, the fuel is still being added, that reignites it, and the engine keeps working. So the reignition system is extremely strong, very reliable. And yeah, I would say that there are probably more engine failures out there than what you've heard of, and that's because the engine relight system has been working well. So it's a great system. But I mean, this is the reason jet engines are so reliable, because there's there's only circular motion inside of them. So in order for a proper engine failure to occur, there needs to be some kind of mechanical failure in the rotating part, or some issue with the inlet, for example, with the damages to the compressor stages, which I talked about in my previous video about compressor stalls, or something like that. But it's not like a piston engine which is moving in this direction. There's a lot of things that can go wrong when you have parts that's moving that way. But if you have a circular motion, it's actually very rare for something to go wrong. That's why they're so reliable. Cool. More questions. Your opinion on the Airbus 220-300 and Zurich Airport. I don't know if there's something special that's happened there that I might have missed. You might have to kind of remind me if that's the case. My general opinion about the Airbus 220 is that it looks like a fantastic aircraft, like fabulous aircraft. I would love to fly that. I love the way that the cockpit is designed. I love the way it looks. I think that it's very good looking and looks like a very futuristic kind of modern aircraft design. So the Airbus 220 in itself, I really like. But if there was something that happened in Zurich Airport, I'm not sure I'm aware of it. And Zurich Airport in itself I haven't flown into, so I can't say whether or not I like it or not. But you know, as far as Zurich is beautiful, so I'm sure I would love to fly in there. So, the ILS pilot, hej från Sverige, love your channel. Well, hallå, hoppas allt är superbra och jättekul att höra att det är fler svenskar på kanalen. So that will be all of the Swedish that I will be delivering tonight. But yeah, thank you very much. It's great to see that people from my home country is tuning in and that you're appreciating the channel. As always, guys, I would love to hear from you guys what you want me to do more of. As you've seen lately, I have kind of pivoted the channel a little bit. I'm still doing the explanatory videos and I will continue to do that. But I'm also coming in with more kind of reaction videos to current events, like news that's going on. Like, for example, my latest video about Boeing and what's gone wrong in Boeing, where I did quite a bit of research about you know, how Boeing used to look back in history, what's happened throughout the history, and what has changed inside of the company to make the culture a little bit different. I'm not going to say it's bad, but I'm going to say it's different. If you like those kind of things, I can continue doing that. I can continue looking into things like what, you know, how was McDonnell Douglas, for example? What kind of company was that? They made some fantastic aircraft, some of the coolest aircraft ever built. But then they were absorbed into Boeing and led partially to what we've seen today. So I can do those kind of things if you guys think that it's interesting. Grant, Rennie, hope all goes well. Yeah, me too. I mean, the channel is big enough now to sustain me in the family, which is fantastic. I mean, 3 years ago, when I could hardly lift a cup of coffee from the channel, but I was still doing a video a week. I could never imagine me being in a situation where where the channel and the work that I do together with you guys could actually sustain me if I would, you know, not get paid for a few months. But this is where I am now. So thanks to you, thanks to my patrons, thanks to what, you know, the ads that I do on the channel and the sponsored videos, I can actually do that. Which is also why I sometimes, I don't know if you've seen that in the comments, but sometimes I get some nasty comments about me taking sponsoring and doing sponsored videos and stuff. But I just don't listen to that. There's a simple reason for that. I have to, like, this, what I do together with this, first of all, it's a little bit risky, as in it's not entirely sure that my company will always enjoy the kind of content that I put out, even though they have been very supportive. But also there are things like, you know, I am challenging Boeing to a certain extent with those kind of videos, and there's always a risk to me that I lose my income, and in that case I have to have a cushion, my family have to have a cushion, and that's why I'm doing that. I'm building up, you know, like something that I'm hoping is going to be great for the future, for future generations of pilots. That's what I'm trying to achieve with the channel. And the channel has already enabled me to start up the Airline Pilot Club together with Andy O'Shea. That would never have happened if I hadn't been working so hard on the channel and been able to reach all of you. The Airline Pilot Club is getting... it's becoming very good. I hope that you guys are going to like it, because I don't know if you've noticed it. I mentioned it in the app live stream that I did before as well. But the way that this channel is built is more to give you guys information, to all of you aviation enthusiasts out there, and maybe some budding pilots as well, but also people who are afraid of flying and things. That's what my channel is about. It's to tell the masses about aviation. But I do know that there's a lot of you out there who wants to become pilots, who desperately want to become pilots. And if that's the case, then the Airline Pilot Club is going to be where we kind of provide proper ways forward, information for you guys, how to get in, what schools are good, if you are suitable through the indicative assessment. You'll get feedback to what part of your personality that needs to improve. There's loads of these things that that will be coming, and I will be putting that together with instructional videos about flight schools and stuff in the Airline Pilot Club, because that's where it belongs, right? Instead of doing very niched material here that very few people watch us, I will take that over to the club. So there's going to be, you'll see that it'll be more crystallized as the Airline Pilot Club gets kicking, which is going to be within a few months from now. We're aiming at end of March, beginning of April for the start of taking in people. So, Oleg 250, I agree that the 737NG is nice and safe aircraft, but the 737 MAX is a complete failure. Do you agree? No. Okay. I agree that the process that had led to what the MAX is right now, or what the MAX has done, has been a complete failure. All right, there's been a complete failure on the side of Boeing and on the side of the FAA, to a certain amount the airlines as well. So yeah, that is not good, and that's not, you know, I'm not going to even start to defend those things. But the aircraft in itself, you have to understand that if, let's say that, for example, let's play with the thought that they did not have MCAS, all right? That the 737 MAX was done without MCAS. What would have happened then? Well, MCAS was put in place in order to make the MAX feel like a 737NG, especially at high angles of attacks, because the engines that are sitting under, a little bit more forward, a little bit more heavy than the engines on the NG, actually started creating lift at high angles of attacks, which is not something that the NG engines did. Okay, so the fact that they were creating lift created an upward nose movement, and the MCAS was put in place in order to simulate the same feel as the 737NG, and that was done for the simple purpose of not having to retrain the pilot in the simulator. Okay, but if you take that away, let's imagine that they never did that. Right? Well, what you have then is, I'm just going to make sure here because it looks all of a sudden like there's no people here. I don't know, guys, before I continue, can you just say if you can see, if you can see this live stream? Just say yes in the comments, because from my direction it looks like there's no one here now. Oh, there we go. All of a sudden everyone came back again. Cool. All right, so let me go back to that. So let's say that the 737 MAX didn't have MCAS. Okay, you with me? Good. What would happen then is that the FAA would not approve it as a 737 type. And they would say, well, either there needs to be some significant differences training here. So the pilots who fly this aircraft is going to have to go into the simulator, and they're going to have to do X amount of hours in the simulator. And that would have been it. Okay, the aircraft would have flown perfectly anyway. We would have had to retrain to feel like, oh yeah, actually at this altitude we have more nose up, so we need to trim forward a little bit as we do this. This is different than the NG, but the aircraft would have been stable. It would have been just as efficient as Boeing is saying. It would have been everything that, you know, the good part that we think about when, well, what the airline thought about when they bought the 737 MAX. Okay, so it's very important to realize that they didn't take a 737 and destroyed it. What happened was that the MCAS was introduced. It became much stronger, much more potent than what the regulator thought it was going to be, and probably what Boeing thought it was going to be as well. And then, due to some serious misconceptions and stuff, it was connected to only one alpha vane, and it was allowed to reset. The real problem here is that it was allowed to reset. If it only would have trimmed forward once and stopped there, it wouldn't have caused these crashes, right? But since it was allowed to reset every time that the pilot kind of touched the button, it reset and it started over again, and it started over again, and it started over again, which is what led to this. But once again, if they would take MCAS away and retrain the pilots on it, it's likely to be a very, very good aircraft, but slightly different from what the NG was. Okay, so I hope that makes a little bit more sense. All right, all of you who are sitting out there and think that the 737 MAX is just an aircraft that just flies into the ground all the time, that's not accurate. It's not. That's why Boeing keeps saying that they will not scrap the program. Now, a different thing is, of course, will people want to go on it? Because not everyone is going to listen to me explaining what the issue is. Most people would have just heard that this is a 737 MAX. It's been grounded for a year. They have found more and more problems with it. But I think that we have to kind of level out what this is, what this actually is. And I know every time that I say this, and every time I do this, I get a lot of hate from people who hate Boeing and says like, it's a shit aircraft. You're just paid off by Boeing. I am not. The last video that I did last week should prove to anyone that I'm not paid by Boeing, okay? Because I'm doubting that Boeing would pay for that content. Cool. So that's what I think about that. So let's see. John B, thank you very much for your support. Hoppetassen. That's a great name. What's your favorite airplane and airport, and why? Well, I mean, okay. So going back, I love the Concorde for its sleek looks, for its progressiveness, for its amazing performance. So as an aircraft and as a pilot, you just have to love that aircraft, Concorde. I think that the Boeing 747 is an absolutely amazing aircraft. It's great to look at. I heard that it's great to fly. The kind of technology that Boeing managed to achieve when the 747 came is amazing, and I would love to fly it. Okay, so those are two of my old favorite aircraft. The 737 is a great aircraft to fly, but it's not one of those that you get your pulse going. Now, the Boeing 787 and especially the Airbus 350, those are some of my new favorites. The Airbus 350 looks awesome. It looks like a sexy aircraft, and the cockpit is brilliant. And I think that Airbus has done a great job there. So I would say right now the Airbus 350 is probably one of my real favorites, and I would love to get myself an Airbus rating. But I also love to fly the Boeing, so that's it. When it comes to airport, I haven't got anyone that I like, oh, I love flying in here. As a trainer, I love flying into Malta, because Malta is nice, long, wide. It has good ILSs from both directions. There's no terrain around, and there's great air traffic control. So that ticks a lot of boxes for a trainer who wants to teach someone to fly. But there's no, like, I know Perugia is beautiful. Like, Perugia is so beautiful, but also so tricky to fly into. Ciampino was great to fly into. When you fly over, like, Rome, the Eternal City, you can look down into the Colosseum as you're on final, especially if you're in the right-hand seat. One of the few benefits of sitting in the right-hand seat. But there's nothing that really stands out to me apart from my home airport. You know, flying home to Girona is beautiful. I can look down at my house. Flying home to where I used to live up in Örnsköldsvik or in Skellefteå up in northern Sweden is also a fantastic thing. Okay, so Steol77, thank you. When do you not have the yaw damper enabled? Never. The only time that the yaw damper that we will fly without the yaw damper is if there's a failure of the yaw damper system, or if we have a single hydraulic system failure. Okay, in order to get the secondary yaw damper up and kicking, you need to have both hydraulic system failed. Then you can re-engage the yaw damper, and that's because flying manual reversion, as it's called, as in completely unaided from hydraulics, is really, really hard. So Boeing decided that in that case you should be able to get the yaw damper on. But the yaw damper is not an essential system. You will get a bit queasy if you fly without it. You'll get some Dutch roll motion and stuff potentially, but it's not a system that makes or breaks the flight. Okay. So Chef 30, thank you for being awesome. Cheers from Italy. Well, thank you for being awesome, for being here, for supporting the channel. And guys, right, I have a very, very ambitious goal set up for 2020. I want this channel to reach 1 million subscribers, and I need your help to get me there. All right. Any tips on how I can achieve that? How I can improve my content to do it? And I'm not like, this is only me like working towards a goal. And you know how I am with goals. I set up a goal and then I try my damnedest to achieve it. It might not be possible. Like, I would have to almost double the size of the channel in 1 year in order for that to be. But I need your help. I need your feedback, and I need you to help me. If you think that I do a video that you think is really interesting, well, then spread it with your friends. All right, use Twitter is very effective for that, or Facebook or whatever. Tell people to come watch, subscribe to the channel, so that we can together build this even further. Because if I can get it over that, it also means that I will be able to reach more people for the Airline Pilot Club. And I can work even harder towards the banks to say, like, listen, there's a humongous amount of people who wants to come in, want to become a pilot. So make sure that you have your funding available. But in any case, your help and your suggestions to what I should be doing, what I should be making videos about, is greatly appreciated. Also, tell me, do you want more like graphics, for example? Do you want me to do more collaborations, or go out and visit aircraft, fly different aircraft types? Anything like that that you think is going to be interesting, let me know about it. Go into the Mentour Aviation app, use the submit feedback function, and tell me what you think. And if you, by the way, are working with like social media marketing out there and you think that you could help, also let me know. All right. Cool. Maybe hit it up Boom Aviation and ask for a tour. Oh yeah, I'd love to get my hands on one of those Boom aircraft when it's up and running. Like, that would be very, very cool. So if you're working for Boom Aviation and you want to show me around, also contact me. So can you explain and review of Antonov 225 plane? Well, for that I'd need to actually go to Russia and to Ukraine. And actually get a tour, and you know, because I've never even been inside of an Antonov aircraft except on an AN2. An Antonov 2 I've been on board of, but not any of those bigger fantastic aircrafts. I would love to go in and see how they work together with a 3-man crew, for example, because I believe that they still fly with a flight navigator and a flight engineer. But yeah, I would love to come and tour an Antonov 225. More of those things, that the bigger the channel becomes, the more of those cool things I can do. Because, like, for example, if I was going to call up Airbus tomorrow and say, listen, is there any possibility that I could come up and, you know, get a tour of an Airbus 350 and look inside, as, you know, maybe check the factory or whatever? If I have, if I'm bigger than I am now, it's going to be easier to have that conversation with Airbus. So this is one of the reasons why I'm really trying to grow the channel now. And also because I have this, you know, because I now see that there's a possibility that I might not be able to continue working for my current employer for forever. And in that case, I would love to shift over to focus more on this and maybe fly a little bit less. So we shall see. Devin Gifford, mom and pop flight school versus accelerated programs. Yeah, so the Airline Pilot Club, as I said, is going to be focusing a lot about giving this kind of advice. I have said many times on my channel, and I keep saying that it's a little bit depending on how you want to do it. We are going to be pushing integrated programs, and the reason we are doing that is because we can quality control those programs. It means that we can go in and we can check a flight school throughout their curriculum to see exactly how they're going to be teaching you, at what stages you're going to be doing what, how that's going to be done, how the instructors are trained and how they do it. On a modular course, it's harder for us to do that. So I believe that there is a perfect possibility for people to go through modular training and pay way less money and get just as high quality training, but it will require more from you, and it will require more work on behalf of the airlines later on when they want to check through your CV, check through your application, and make sure that you kind of have done what you should during your flight school. So like integrated, if you can find a good integrated program where the sweet spot should be about between 75 to 85,000 euros, somewhere around there, then I think if it was up to me today, I will probably go through an integrated course, because it's quicker, and because especially like if you get into the Airline Pilot Club and we can help you out with some of the funding, then if the funding becomes less of an issue, then that will be easier for you, and it'll probably be easier for the airlines to employ you afterwards. But like I said, having said that, doing modular training, if you manage to make sure that you keep, I will say that if you do modular training, you can do PPL in one small flight school, but try to keep the CPL, IRME on one flight school, so it becomes easier to track you when it's time for you to apply for an airline job. And also go through an APS MCC course. All right, it's expensive, it's more expensive, but it's much better. And I'm talking because I work together with the father of the APS MCC, Andy O'Shea, which is my co-founder of the Airline Pilot Club. He is the one that came up with the APS MCC concept. So I know that like we're both working towards increasing standard, increasing quality of training, of flight training throughout, both because we know it's good for you and we know it's good for the airlines, we know it's good for the flight schools. And he has been doing that in many steps, and the first one was to create the APS MCC, because there was a lot of bad MCC courses out there. So if you're doing modular, definitely go through an APS MCC. That's my suggestion. Oleg 250, do you speak any languages besides English and Swedish? Danish, German? Well, I mean, if you're Swedish, you do understand and speak okay-ish kind of Norwegian. Norwegians will understand us and we'll be able to speak to them. Danish, especially not if you're up from north of Sweden, which I am. I do speak a little bit of Spanish now. I understand Catalan, but I don't speak it very well. But I mean, I'm perfectly fluent in English, in Swedish. I can get around with my Spanish, but that's about it. So, Dominic Pirek, I knew that they would wipe the floor with cadets in case of maxes, but captain with 20 years of experience, quite shocking. Good luck to you, Peter. I don't know if I understand that. I knew that they would wipe the floor with cadets in case of maxes, but captain with 20 years of experience, quite shocking. Do you mean that you don't believe in what I'm saying about the max? In that case, I mean, that's also a thing. If I have no problems with people disagreeing with me. I only speak from the experience that I have, and you also have to understand that I'm not only speaking based on my own experience. I have quite a lot of contacts within the like aviation journalism space as well, and also with some aviation experts, general aviation experts that I generally tend to talk about these things with. I'm not just pulling these things out of my own head. I wouldn't be able to. So before I say something like that, I would have checked that with experts in the region, all right, in the airline business. So I can't tell anyone to believe what I'm saying, but yeah, that's what I'm not going to go into to discussing that too much. So, man, I'm missing here. There's so many questions here, guys. By the way, you in the normal chat, there's so many super chat questions here now that I do apologize for not being able to go up and take any, but I have to take the ones that are paying for the questions here first. Grant Rennie, well, thank you. Always nice with the cake. Anthony Ochoa, hi Mentor. When pilots do hard braking on the taxiway, that's because they made a mistake or they're close to hit something. I would say that in 99% of the cases, if someone just stands on the brakes on the taxiway, it is because they are very close to making a wrong turn. Right, that tends to be the case. They realize that, oh, we should turn right, and they just stop there to see if they can do something. They could also be that someone else is coming out ahead of them, breaking a clearance, or someone else has gotten lost, and you have to like put yourself on the brakes to make sure that there's no ground collision. But I would say in most cases it's because they have taken the wrong taxiway and they just realized it, and their kind of backbone reaction is just to put themselves on the brakes. K24774567, which is a bit of a mouthful of a nickname, but sure. Not a question, but I credit you and your videos in getting me to where I am now. I start sim training for the airlines this week. Thank you. Congratulations. Like, that is fantastic to hear. I'm so happy for you. This channel has been around for almost like 4 years now at least. So this means that there was a lot of people who started watching this, well, before they started flight school, and who have now gone through flight school, and some have already gotten jobs throughout kind of the history of me making videos about what they should be thinking about when they come for an airline interview and things like that. So I am starting to hear that more and more, and it's so happy. I cannot tell you how glad I am to hear when those things happen, because if I can just enable someone's dreams to become reality, well, then all the time that I put into this channel is worth it. So congratulations. Best of luck with your airline training. I hope that you're going to love the journey that you have ahead. Like, now the fun really starts, okay? Make the most out of it, you know. Learn as much as you can from your training captains. Try to live somewhere where you haven't lived before. So if you get a base that you didn't request, it might be a blessing. It might mean that you'll be able to live and experience stuff that you never thought you would. So see everything as a possibility and the gift that it is. And best of luck once again. Let me know how it goes. Jake Ryan, why do you switch from indicated airspeed to Mach number at a certain altitude? What's the purpose of the transition altitude? The transition altitude and transition level, that's different from the IS to Mach. So transition altitude and transition levels are to switch between standard setting, which is where we fly on flight level. That's to make sure that everyone is having the same kind of vertical separation from each other. Because remember, as you take off on a specific QNH, a pressure setting, so that you get the correct altitude above the ground or above sea level. And that's really important when you have terrain and stuff around, right? Because the terrain chart is based on height of a sea. You want to know how high you are over the sea so that you don't fly into a mountain. But above the transition altitude, then you switch over to standard setting, which is 113.25 or 1013.25. And from that moment on, you're so high up. In the States, I think it's 18,000 feet, and in Europe it can vary a little bit, but it tends to be between 7,000 and 12,000 feet. You switch over to there because above there shouldn't really be much terrain to work about, but there will be other aircraft. So what you don't want is someone flying from A, where the pressure is one pressure, and another one flying from B, where there's another pressure, and then them thinking that they have 1,000 feet separation, but in reality, because the pressures was a high pressure here and a low pressure there, in reality they're close to each other. So you avoid that by both of these aircraft putting themselves onto standard pressure, and that way making sure that they always have at least 1,000 feet between them. That's the transition level and the transition altitude. Transition level as you're going down, transition altitude as you're going up. The reason we go from indicated airspeed to Mach number is because as you climb, the temperature starts sinking. So does the speed of sound. And as you're getting higher in the case of the 737, above 26,000 feet approximately, then your the Mach number will start to become more of a limiting factor than your high speed stall. So we have, for example, 340 knots indicated as high speed stall, or the maximum speed, I should say. But as we get above 26,000 feet, the critical Mach number is coming down all the time, and around there, they've just chosen 26,000 feet because it works quite okay. Around there, if we would stay on indicated airspeed, you would soon hit the critical Mach number, as in you would go into Mach overspeed. So because you're climbing up into colder air and the Mach number is coming down, then they switch over to a Mach number and we keep flying on that as we're on higher levels. And then as you're descending down again and the critical Mach number disappears above you, well, then you switch over to indicated airspeed, because that becomes the most limiting factor. So this is a little bit like, this is the reason why you have to pay close attention to your physics lessons and your ATPL theory, because that's where you'll be discussing these things. Okay, Rod, what is pilot shortage and what is causing it? Well, pilot shortage is something that we've heard about for my entire career. They've said that it's about to become a pilot shortage. There hasn't really been. The closest I've seen it be was the last 2 years before the MAX debacle happened, where the airlines were constantly expanding. They bought loads of new aircraft. There's more new aircraft coming in. And with new aircraft, there needs to be new pilots trained. And of course, as the pilot course costs about 85 to 120,000, means that there's less and less pilots that have the money, or less and less people that have the money to do that actually wants to become pilots. Because with the cost, there's also been a slight decrease in terms and conditions. The relative salary, while during the 80s, 70s and 80s, it was like a rock star salary. Now, not as much. Now a banker will get more paid than a pilot will. So it's becoming harder then to try to convince your mom and dad to let you train to become a pilot if you could skip those 100 or 120,000 euros in cost and maybe go and do a university degree and become a banker instead. So there's been less pilots being trained, more pilots needed. And with that comes better and better terms and conditions as well. Now, what will happen during the next few years, about 2022 is what the sources are saying now, is that the baby boom generation, the pilots that were born in the late 50s and early 60s, they will retire now. They should have retired, according to the old rules, they should have retired 5 years ago. But the mandatory retirement age went from 60 to 65, and now they're talking about 67 for pilot. And that is to delay this, okay? Because when the baby boom generation pilots disappear, when they go and retire, there's going to be less pilots available. And that's good for you, and it's good for me. It's not good for the airlines. So the Airline Pilot Club is also kind of a way that we are trying to foresee this happening. We know that there's going to be a lot of pilots needed. So we're trying to facilitate people that previously would not have thought about becoming pilots. People like you that could become great pilots, that have all of the capacity, the abilities, the aptitude for becoming it. But maybe you don't have access to the money. And we think that that is bad, because we can see that this pilot shortage is about to hit, and there needs to be stuff enforced in order to facilitate it. In a perfect world, the airlines would pay for the training. That is unlikely to happen. They are very, very keen of keeping their own costs down until it's absolutely necessary. So yeah, we shall see. But that's what pilot shortage is about anyway. How will Brexit affect aviation in 2020 and beyond? We don't know. No one knows. Like, Britain has now left the European Union, means that they have 1 year to negotiate everything, and that goes from how much a lollipop should cost if it's imported from France, to if someone with a UK license are allowed to fly in a European airline. So there's like a plethora of stuff that needs to be negotiated, and until those negotiations have happened, we don't know what Brexit is going to do. Hopefully very little. I think it's in the best interest of all of the European membership countries, the people in the UK, the travelers in the UK, the pilots, the airlines, to make sure that, you know, the freedom of movement can continue. We all hope that that's going to be the case. But you know, we don't know. And if it becomes a hard Brexit without any trade deal, well, then what's going to happen is that the pilots inside of the UK will not be able to work for airlines flying outside without having to convert their licenses. The same for the European pilots that wants to work for UK airlines. Same with simulators, same with medicals, same with everything. Complete mess, right? This is one of the reasons why it was a good idea to kind of work together, and you know, but I'm not going to go into politics here. Drunk Hog, hi, mid-30s pilot wannabe here. Should I wait for the APC and the personality and other tests, or go spend 200 euros on a class 1 AME? Well, I mean, you are going to have to go and get, if you're going to become a pilot, what I would say is you could probably wait for a few months and do the indicative assessment with the APC and see what it says. And if it says that, yeah, good, looks good, this, then spend money on your medical. And once you have the medical and that together, then we can start looking at the flight school for you. Okay, but it's probably a good idea to do the indicative assessment just to see that there's nothing in there that just is a showstopper, which, you know, can happen, and I've seen it happen. But hopefully, most people are going to do the indicative assessment and get back kind of a plan saying that, all right, we've seen this, these and these and these and these gates are good. This is something that you need to work on. Could be your English language, could be communication skills, could be something like that. And then you'll have a few months to kind of work on that and then retake the test. So that's the idea. You'll get feedback. This is something that's new. That previously you just get a yes or a no, or maybe. Here you will get feedback to what it is that you are lacking, if anything, and how to kind of attend to that. So, Mindigoth, is it true that an autopilot landing is less gentle as it's effectively told to land below ground to overcome ground effect? No. No. Alright, it lands on the radio altimeter. It uses the radio altimeter to actually coordinate when it starts to flare. An auto land on the 737 starts to flare at 30 feet. Well, actually, it goes into flare retard mode at 30 feet, but it starts to flare at 50 feet already, which is earlier than we do if we fly it. We start our flare between 25 and 30 feet somewhere. This is why the auto land needs more runway, because it will actually flare a bit higher than we would do. But it's not told to land below the runway to avoid the ground effect. No. Sierra Romeo Mike. Thank you very much for your generous contribution, by the way. Do 737 NG and MAX have identical airframes minus the engines? If yes, is it theoretically possible to convert a MAX into an NG by replacing the engines? Also, why don't you just increase the height of the 737 landing gear? The airframes, I believe, are identical in some of them. I think the MAX 8 is the same. The wings are not. Winglets obviously are not. The landing gear is actually longer on the Max, so it is different. So you can't just, no, it's not possible. You could potentially screw some CFM56 engines onto it, but it would come with other problems, because it is like the Max is built to have the Leap 1 Bravo engines on them. They can't make the landing gear any bigger than it is. Actually, at the moment, they've made some kind of like incredible linkage that makes the landing gear taller, and as it's retracting, it's actually kind of retracting into itself before it's being put up into the main wheel well bay. And that's the thing, you know. If you make the landing gear any longer, you will not be able to fit the landing gear in. You will have to move it further out, and then you have to completely rebuild the wings, the design, everything. So you can't, like the 737 MAX is the end of the line. You cannot put any bigger engines on that aircraft without strapping them on top of the wings, okay? Which comes with its own problems, I should say. So they can't, because there's no room to actually fit the landing gear into the wheel well bay in that case. It's as easy as that. So the answer to your question is no, you can't make an NG out of a MAX, and they can't do anything more to the landing gear. Shapes 240. Thanks for a great channel. Thank you. Is fatigue still as much of a problem in the industry as it was historically? Yeah, fatigue is and will always be a problem in the industry. It doesn't happen always. Normally the airlines have very good roster patterns now that they kind of thinks about fatigue. They have to legally do so. But you can still have a day where you've been flying for, 13, 14 hours straight, and you end up landing at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning after having huge delays because of technical issues or because of weather, where fatigue can be an issue. You have to be aware of it. This is why we cannot extend flight duty, for example, without checking with our colleagues, with our cabin crew, to make sure that everyone is okay, in order to go into what we call captain's discretion. So fatigue is something that we're all acutely aware of. It hasn't become better. It has stayed the same, but what has become better is the awareness of it as a potential problem, and that's important. So Anna, sorry, you disappeared there. My favorite is the 787. The wing is a work of art, but the new 777X rivals it. She's gorgeous. Yeah. Did you see that takeoff, that first takeoff? Those wings are incredible. Like, I have never seen something that gracious as when that 777X took off. Like, that was beautiful. So yeah, I fully agree. So, Steel77, I have a tip to grow the channel. Do aviation travel videos like Sam Chui, but with more technical details. Yeah, I could do that. I could, when I go out traveling, I could do something similar. However, I don't want to stray too far away from what the channel actually is, because then the subscribers that subscribe to get technical kind of explanation videos, they might not want to see me flying business class over to Hong Kong or whatever. So it's a great idea. I don't really know how to do it in a great way. I did try it a little bit. Remember when I flew over to Thailand, that I did a comparison as a passenger between the 787 and the Airbus 350. That was, people like that. So it's actually a good idea. I would love to be able to travel and do videos about it. Petra Olsson, hi Petra. I love the way you handle your fellow YouTubers. In any specific way? Yeah, I love my fellow aviation YouTubers. Like, this is something that if people don't know it already, they definitely should. If another aviation YouTuber does a great job, and I can get some of you guys to log on to his or her channel and become a subscriber there, that's also good for me. Like, the bigger, for example, the Blanco Lirio channel becomes, the better it is for me, because when you watch one of his fantastic videos, well, then the next video that is kind of given to you by the YouTube algorithm might be one of mine, or might be one of Captain Joe's, or might be 74 Gear, or someone like that. So the more we work together, the better it is for you, and the better it is for us. This is all about sharing, you know. And there's so many great aviation YouTubers out there now that we provide different, even when we do the same videos, even when we do the videos on the same subjects, it's still interesting to watch because we have so different kind of attack angles on it. So yeah, no, thank you. It's nice to hear. Dominic Pirek, we didn't understand each other. I can't believe that they would fire you. Ah, sorry. All right, I was a little bit tickly there. After 20 years working for them without a blink of an eye. Yeah, all right. So, yes, I didn't believe so either. When I got that email, which I got in my inbox, my own personal inbox, I couldn't believe it either. But it is unfortunately the reality of the aviation world. This is why I keep telling you guys that like it's, you have to be, you always have to, just like when you fly, when you have to have alternatives. As in, you need to know what to do in case the worst thing happens. The same thing kind of goes for what you need to do in the aviation business, because you never really know. Like this 737 MAX thing is a huge catastrophe for the airlines that are involved. My airline, for example, were counting on getting a certain amount of MAXes for their expansion. So they've been hiring loads of pilots for that. And they've also been selling off aircraft. And those orders, like these aircraft that they're selling off, they can't cancel that. They have already written contracts about reselling the aircraft to other airlines. So this means that as the MAX that was supposed to be there to kind of replace them doesn't come, not only is the airline not expanding what it has been hiring for, it's actually contracting, it's becoming smaller. So all of a sudden there's a huge like over influx of pilots. And that is an issue, not only for my airline, but for every airline that has a similar working strategy. So yeah, I would have thought that 18 years would have counted something. It did not, not in the way that I hoped anyway. But I am here still. I didn't lose my job. I was among the lucky ones who got to keep the job. Some pilots did lose their jobs, and that was first officers and captains alike. The bases that were closed. That's it. So it's a very, very cutthroat business. And when I talk about alternatives, means that you have to. I mean, in the beginning, when you're a first officer, you don't have much of a choice. You just need to get your hours, your experience up. But once you have that, then you need to always have a kind of escape route. What if my airline goes bankrupt, which happens now and then? We've seen that in the last few years. What if X, Y, Z happens? In that case, I am going to do this. You need to have a few months at least. I would argue that you should have about 6 months of salary on your account. That doesn't mean that you need to have 6 full salaries. It just means you have 6 months of paying your bills, mortgage, rent on your account, so that if something would happen to you, well, then you have at least 6 months where you can start filing on your CV, going for interviews, doing things like that without it becoming an issue for you. So keep that in mind. And I don't think that goes only for aviation. I think that goes for all jobs. It's always good to have a buffer, and say 6 months is a good buffer to have. So, and thank you for straightening it out, Dominic. I've just had a lot of negative feedback on my on my 737 MAX videos, so that's why. Cody Popham, would you switch flying long haul? Why yes or not? No, not while my kids are still small, because I will be away from them way too much and I wouldn't enjoy that. I like being home with my family. I like being able to do this with you guys. So long haul is something that I would do either as a young pilot without family, or when my kids have grown older and my wife doesn't want me in the house as much, then maybe. But not right now. Not in the middle of when you have your family, then I'm not that interesting. However, if I lose my job, all bets are off. Then I might go for it. Right? So you never know. So, hi from Sam Petrus. Hi Sam, great to have you here. Hi Petra, how is the engine attached to the wing? Yeah, it's attached with wing bolts, as in it's sitting on the engine. What's it called? Oh, I forget the name now. But you know that there's a little, like an attachment. I would say wing, but like a bulk like that goes down, where the engine is actually attached, and it's attached with a couple of very strong bolts there, but they're not strong enough to not shear off in case you would, for example, do a belly landing. So the way that it's constructed is so that if you do land and the engine strikes the runway, those bolts are supposed to shear the engines off, so that the engine doesn't break the wings or cause a fire because of that. So there is a thought about how the engines are actually attached to the wing, but they're still obviously extremely, extremely strong. Might be worth doing a video about. Oleg 250, is the 737 Classic harder to fly than an NG? No. The Classic actually in some senses are easier to fly than an NG. It's built, it's more closer to the original design, which was the way that it was supposed to be made. But from a pure like instrument flying point of view, then yes. In some cases it's a little bit more steam gauges in the Classic. It has smaller EFIS displays. There is some trickiness to it, but no, not really. And those, like for example the 737-200, which we had in our airline before I started, everyone who flew that said that they liked flying that much more than the NG, because it just takes you a little while to get used to the steam gauges. Once you're used to that, then you just concentrate on how the aircraft is handling. And the 737-200, which is the Jurassic type, they say it handled like a sports car. Like, it was beautiful to fly, very quick, very responsive, and so on. So no, the Classic were not harder, it's just different. Fred Hill, I've flown the 737-100, 500, 700, 800, 900 and max. Excellent, Fred. In that case, you should have answered that question. Bob Blitheract, I am 61. Is there any point for me for trying for ATP? No. At 61, you only have a few. You would probably struggle to even be done with your training before it's time for you to retire. So it's at 61, I would focus on getting. You can still get your instrument rating on your multi-engine rating, for example. You can still fly a bigger aircraft, but you should do it more for fun, because it's unlikely that you will be able to get your training done, and it's very unlikely that you'll find a job. And in that case, the CPL is just waste of money, unless you find another type of commercial operation that you might want to do. So there's people flying like touristic tours, for example, or flying parachuters or things like that. That you could probably do for a longer while, and you might need CPL for that. But going into the airline industry around 60, like I will not like. I know people that have started in their 50s. Obviously, you will not be able to kind of repay the investment over that time. So if you have money sitting around, that's fine. You will still be able to have about 15 years in the industry if you want. But there's somewhere around there where it's not becoming, from an economical point of view, a very good transaction. Why are they called? Let's see. I've also flown on US Air Force 737. I think a 200. Cool. Yeah, 200 is beautiful. Blob Literact. Why are they called steam gauges? I don't know exactly where that name comes from, but I'm guessing that they're, as in they're very old. It looks like they're used, look like they're steam driven, and they're not, obviously. But I think that's where it comes from. Okay, guys, if you could stop sending super chat questions now, because I am running out of voice and I don't want to miss anyone. Do you see any big changes coming after Kobe's crash? No. No, the Kobe Bryant crash is just tragic. It's, there's always a risk to flying helicopters, that's one. And there's very much a risk to flying helicopters in VFR rules in fog, or close to fog. The aircraft was instrument, like the aircraft had the instrument for flying IFR. I think the pilots were trained to fly IFR as well, but they were flying VFR. And if you're flying VFR, you should not be even close to fog, which is what happened here. So it's going to become one of those just very sad examples of when things were not done right. A flight that probably shouldn't have happened. Basically, someone should have told, the pilot should have said, either we fly this IFR into an airfield where there's an instrument arrival, or we don't fly today. You take the car. That's it. And for whatever reason, that didn't happen, and it had this very, very tragic outcome. So no, I don't think there's going to be much changes after it, unfortunately, because the rules are already there. Oleg 250. Some say the 777 Classic is harder because of automation, glass technology. Autopilot is better on the NG. The autopilot and the automation is better. Yeah, that is true. That's some of the great improvements that can be the NG. However, that doesn't necessarily make it easier or harder to fly. It just might change the workload slightly, or you might have come up with some fixes. But you'll notice that even people who fly on the 200 who didn't even have a proper autopilot, had like heading select and level change, and that's it. They still wouldn't characterize it as being harder to fly. So it might be more exhausting to fly, but not harder, as in not more complicated. But it's up. Every pilot have their own insights on that and their own opinions on that. Vector Raum, as a software engineer, I'd say you're spot on the max. That kind of thing is. Let's see, it disappeared here. I go up to the normal chat to see if I can find it. So no more super chat questions, guys, because I can't take it. Thank you, Peter. You are double awesome. Well, thank you. You are as well. So here we go. As a software engineer, I'd say you're spot on about the max. That kind of thing is organizational. Thank you for your insight and great content. Well, thank you for being here. I am working on more content. I'll probably come with a bonus video through this week as well, and then we'll see what comes up on Friday. And guys, before I go, I see that there's still a lot of people watching, which I'm so happy about. Now, all of you guys that have not downloaded the Mentour Aviation app, I want you to go and do it right now. It's completely free to download it, guys. You have the links to download it down here. Okay, just go to mentorpilot.com/apps or use the link here, get it for iOS and Android, and go in, set up your profile, put your profile picture in so we can see you, and start hitting away on the chat. I'll be there for the next 20 minutes or so, because I always use the app to kind of wind down after my live stream. So come in and ask any further questions inside of the app. And also, as I always do, this is the icon that you will be clicking on. Now it's much nicer now, actually. This is the old version of the app. The new version is much lighter. But what I wanted to show you is the training collections that you can get. So if you get the Mentour Aviation app, I have created collections where you can see me and my first officer do things like a full setup of the 737 from when it's dark and cold until it's ready to fly. Or engine failures, or TCAS maneuvers, and wind shear escape maneuvers, Cat 3 ILSs, things like that. And the way that you'll be able to use it is that if you buy that collection, it's one of the few things that you need to pay for in the app, you'll be able to look around in the cockpit. So while I'm flying a Cat 3 approach, you can watch me, or you can look over to see what my first officer is doing, and look around in the cockpit, see what switches we use and why. I'll be explaining it as we do so, and you can either scroll around with the fingers like I'm doing here, you can move the phone around, or if you have a Google Cardboard headset, then you can put the phone into that and you have a VR menu inside of the app so you can navigate from, and it will feel just like you're sitting on the jump seat together with me. Now the all-in-one collection, that's all of the 360 videos that I've ever done and probably will ever do in the app. You'll get that for only $20, right? That will give you about 2 hours of instruction, 737 instruction with me. So I highly recommend you, if you haven't checked it out, to go and check it out. But you don't have to pay for anything, right? You can get the app, you can use the news function, you get news pushes every day. And by the way, if you're annoyed by the pushes, if you go to settings, you can choose which pushes you want to receive or not, so that you don't get it pushing all the time. But we will send out anything that something interesting happened in the aviation industry. You will get a push from the app and it will tell you what's going on, and I really hope that you'll enjoy it. Okay, and that's it, guys. As always, I hope, well, let's see if I can take some questions from the normal chat. Which do you like more, Airbus or Boeing? At the moment, it's starting to favor Airbus, actually, but I like the Boeing philosophy of having the kind of pilots as the last resort, as the last word. I like that better. And by the way, guys, if you want to get yourself some nice Mentor merch, you'll have that available as well. I think here in the video description as well, or below, you can go into Teespring and see you can get yourself a coffee cup or a t-shirt or whatever. And I hope that I see you in Berlin, by the way, 21st, 22nd of February. It's only a few weeks away now. I'm going to be there, especially on the Saturday. I'm going to come in the afternoon. On the Friday, I'll give a keynote speech about APC. And then I'll be coming out saying hello to you guys. And on the Saturday, I'll be there the whole day talking to you. And if you have the Mentour Aviation app, I have a forum there. There is a code, a discount code that you can use. And you just go to buy your tickets at the Pilot Expo and you put that code in. And if you do that, you'll get free entrance to the event. And it's not only going to be me, it's going to be, I don't know, hundreds of flight schools and organizations around there. So if you are interested in becoming a pilot and you want to come and say hello to me, then come to Berlin on the 21st and the 22nd. It's the Pilot Expo, so check that out. What happened? Did you get fired? Yeah, I talked about that earlier. So you're gonna have to see the rerun of the live stream. Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. It says here about the Kobe Bryant crash, check the Blanco Lirio channel. Yeah, so the Blanco Lirio channel has done some great reporting on the Kobe Bryant crash, so go and check out his channel if you want some more insight into that. And with that, my neighbor stinks. All right, I'm sorry to hear that. Cool. With that, I just want to say a huge thank you for all of you who have spent your Sunday evening here together with me. I hope to see you next Sunday as well, as we'll be doing this. And if you like these live streams, then once again, in the Mentour Aviation app, I am there. I'm doing more live streams, maybe 2-3 a week. And if you're a premium member of the app, you'll be able to ask questions there. So have a fantastic day wherever you are, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.